Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I'm doing another top 5 hype decks for the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! These are decks that are pretty much unplayable right this second, right now, but I do think going into the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! They're going to be pretty dang hype for me specifically. Keep in mind, this is my personal list. These are my 5 decks that I'm most excited for, or at least looking ahead for. Obviously, everyone's list is going to be the same, so feel free to let me know down in the comment section below your list of archetypes that you're looking at or decks that you're excited to build, just looking at the future and what is coming. I have my list over here. My one honorable mention is going to be a field spell deck. I know you can technically play it right now, but we are going to get a couple of more cards that help facilitate it better. Specifically, a couple of tuners, more so than anything else. Revolution Synchron, I think that card's actually quite crazy. But yeah, that's going to be my number 6 that didn't make the list here, but everything else is in there. So let's get into this thing. Moving along. Number 1, or I will call it number 5. We'll work our way down. These aren't in like a super specific order. I went loose order. Infernoble Knight. I was never a huge Infernoble fan when they first came out. I thought they were cool, but then when we learned very quickly that they were pretty insane and also degenerate as hell using Smoke Grenade to hand rip cards, I kind of leaned off. And it's also a super heavy combo deck. That's not my style either. But now we've seen some interesting progression. This new wave of support in Duelist Nexus is crazy. Specifically, more than anything else, the new Link 1 Charlemagne. This card's insane. And the new Synchro is kind of just like a card that gets you a +2, essentially. So, a ton of value. And even the 2 spells are also good as well. So, really cool deck. I'm going to personally look at this strategy and see if I can come up with a more mid-range strategy, way to play it. The deck already seems to have a ton of ways to have recursion, which is awesome. You know, you make Ice Soul, you're going to add a Gear Freed, so you just have that coming next turn no matter what. You have ads on end phase. You have ads. You just have tons of ways to just add stuff for free on end phase. You can end up with 2 to 3 cards in hand, maybe something else engraved that could come out easily. All this stuff, which is really, really cool. So I'm excited to mess around with that and see if I can come up with something cool in the more mid-range, style, more so than a super heavy combo deck. But I think this has legit meta potential. That's what I'm going to keep an eye on, where they end up. But yeah, very, very powerful deck, for sure. Very awesome support. Next up, we have Teller Knight. Now, this one is not as far away as the Infernoble Knight support. This one's actually coming a little bit sooner. This one is in Cyberstorm Access, only a couple months away here. But it's Teller Knights. Yeah, I've talked about Teller Knights plenty of times on the channel. They were actually my number 1 pick for actually, I think, like the last year or two. Every time I made a video saying these archetypes need support, they were my number 1 choice every single time. That just made perfect sense, and they finally got it, and it's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's amazing. I still feel like the deck is somewhat fragile, and they leaned a little bit more away from the control-y strategy that it was before, and leaned more into a combo-esque build. But I do think there's some legs here. There's definitely power. When you resolve your stuff, you get very, very strong results. And the question is going to be how well can you facilitate your strategy? How well can you protect it? Can the deck be more resilient than we want it to be, than it seems to be? And if you can get those things going, then it's going to have some really good potential. But until we see that, it's cool, but it's lower on my list because of that. One, a little more combo, not my preferred style, but it is still an archetype I really like. I want to mess with it. I want to see if I can do something with it. And I do think at worst it's going to be a solid rogue deck that, like, if you have a good tournament run, it can definitely get you some solid results. So yeah, Teller Knights, number 4 for me. Moving into number 3. This is the only brand new archetype on this list for me. It's Vanquish Soul. This archetype has so many cool factors to it. I really, really love the first setup of this archetype. I know a lot of people poo-pooed on it when I did my review of it, but every time I get a new archetype, I come into it thinking this archetype is going to get more cards, because that's what Konami does. They release the bulk of it all at once, but then they give the next core set 1 or 2 more cards, the next core set 1 or 2 more cards, and then down the line probably more cards. So I don't go into it looking at that one wave and say, oh, it's terrible. And I don't even think it's terrible. I think it's a deck that has good consistency, because you have 2 separate monsters that, when they're summoned, search you a different type of card in your deck. So you've got starters. They have an insane Link 1. Oh my god. Decks with Link 1s are good generally, and this Link 1 is really strong. So the Link 1's crazy. They have a decent boss monster, and this is where the deck kind of lags for most people, is pretty much anybody who had a gripe with this deck said, this deck doesn't do anything. They don't get you enough interruption. And I agree right now. But I do think the deck pluses a ton. I do think the deck gets you a bunch of follow-up. And so you're able to play turn after turn after turn. The question is going to be, can we get enough interruption set up? Maybe it's the kind of deck where you try to just play a ton of defensive slots, 15 to 20 hand traps, defensive cards, whatever you want, board breakers, and hopefully that can carry the weight, at least for now. And maybe down the line we'll get access to just easier or more consistent / more powerful like actual interruption setups. But I still really think the setup is really cool. I think the whole gimmick with like needing certain attributes in your hand to get really powerful effects is really neat. And I really like the setup. I am planning on picking them up when they come out, and maybe even building them out the gate and playing them as a bad rogue deck. But I still think it could even be decent out the gate. But I'll have to mess around with it and actually see. So there you go. Number 3, Vanquish Soul. The only brand new archetype on this list, but still definitely made it for me. Number 2, Zephra. You guys know I'm hype on Zephras. I was actually playing Zephras for a while, a couple formats ago, and we haven't been in a great Zephra format. Now we're in a really bad format for any Pendulum deck, just because Kashtira can technically lock your Pendulum zones. If they lock either Pendulum zone, you probably just lose if you're a Pendulum deck going second. So that's terrible. That's just a terrible factor to have be part of your deck competitively. So it is what it is. But I do think we're going to get Cyberstorm access around the time we get our next ban list, which I am expecting something, excuse me, jeez, something in Kashtira to see a hit. And if that happens, then obviously that deck gets weaker, easier to deal with, and then Zephras can have the potential to flourish. Now, it's important to note, Zephras don't actually get support anywhere, but we do get the new Super Heavy Samurai cards, and that is what breaks open Zephras. Zephras, I don't know if had ever had a 1-card combo, but they had a ton of 2-card combos. Now with the new Super Heavy Samurai stuff, you have multiple ways to access the new monster, Prodigy Wakaushi. That monster is a 1-card full-scale setup for Zephras with an extra like body or 2 on field. It's really, really powerful. I cannot wait to mess around with it and see how how fruitful the combos really are, because if they are, then I mean, the sky is the limit for this deck, especially if something like Kashtira gets limited and then we're able to just play a bunch of the other decks in the format, and those may be a lot easier to deal with. That's hopefully the case. But one of my favorite decks to ever play competitively is getting a really nice buff, and that's kind of what it comes down to here. I don't even like Pendulum decks that much, but Zephra is such a cool, control-y Pendulum strategy that it's so much more fun to me than just doing a wombo combo, Pendulum type deck. So can't wait, but Zephra is number 2 for me. Which takes us to number 1, and this one, is probably going to be up there for a lot of people. Unchained, and I am no exception. I know it may be basic at this point, but I love Unchained. I always have liked Unchained, but the one thing I always had gripes with were the specific weaknesses the deck had, which was the deck didn't feel like it plussed enough all the time. It felt like you traded 1-for-1 a lot, but you never actually plussed with many of your plays. Now it feels like the deck has ways to actually go plus, which is really nice. So your engine is just downright stronger. You still have that factor to your deck where if your opponent does not have access to non-destruction removal, they are in a ton of trouble. You will punish them immensely for it. And yeah, it's just a cool deck. It plays a really cool mid-range strategy. I don't think it's going to be super heavy combo. I don't think it's going to be super heavy control. You could still play a decent amount of trap cards. Like there's been builds like that in the past, but I think more so than anything, a mid-range strategy is going to be the way to go. And then you play just whatever tech cards you think are the best in that given format to supplement it. But all in all, the new monster, Shavara for the main deck, awesome. The new Link 2, awesome. The other monster's solid. It's a nice one-of in the deck that you probably play at 1 to facilitate certain plays and have follow-up on later turns, but you probably don't need it. It's not a super, super important card, but still important to note. Important enough to know. But all in all, I'm very excited for this. I think the deck takes a huge step forward. pretty much the exact thing I was hoping for. This, as well as Tellarknights, are the only two archetypes that I've hit on my before the year list that the archetypes that should get support in 2023. So I feel even more into them just because I was already invested in them that way, which is still really cool. But yeah, that's my 5 list. Infernoble Knights, Tellarknights, Vanquish Souls, Zephras, and Unchained. It's important to note one more thing before we get out of here. These are subject to change. Konami is always releasing support. We are not even halfway through with Duelist Nexus. I could have easily waited on this video, but I honestly was just really excited to talk about these archetypes and get this out, and obviously I can make another one if we get more stuff revealed as we keep going. So there's Duelist Nexus. There is Animation Chronicle, which in the TCG will be printed as Battles of Legend, usually. We could easily get Storm Riders, Drones, Armatos Legio, one of those like 5 or 6 really cool Linked Vrains archetypes that have not ever been printed in the TCG. That could be something. Some of those archetypes look really good on, like, from the anime. If those cards translate well, there could be something there that's really hype. And then also the Fire Legendary Duelist and the Jack Atlas structure deck could offer stuff to be somewhat relevant there. But for right now, this is what I got. I'm very excited for these. I know a lot of people I agree with this on. I have an issue sometimes of looking too much ahead. And then I don't even enjoy the moment. Like, I don't even enjoy the format I'm in, the decks I should be playing right now, because I'm just so excited to play decks that aren't even playable yet. So this is just really fun. Helps me get this off my chest. Get these, just get this urge to talk about these decks out of me. But I'm out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff from your boy down the line. And like I said at the beginning of the video, put your list down below. I love to see what you guys are most interested in, most excited for at any moment in time. It gives me a good idea of just where you guys are at and what you're messing around with, which I love. So I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Peace.